Our 2023 commencement speaker today is Dr. Orpheus J. Heyward. Dr. Heyward is the senior minister of Renaissance Church of Christ in Atlanta, where he has served for 2 decades. Renaissance has grown under his leadership to become not only one of the largest African-American churches of Christ in America, but also one of the most impactful. He's earned multiple academic degrees, including a bachelor's degree in biblical studies from Amherst University, a Master of Arts in Biblical Studies from Tennessee Temple University, and a Doctor of Ministry degree from Knox Theological Seminary. He is pursuing a PhD in Biblical Exposition from Liberty University. Dr. Heyward is passionate about teaching the process of biblical interpretation and loves imparting knowledge regarding expositional preaching. He's the author of Dead, Dipped, Delivered, a grammatical and contextual analysis of baptism passages. I met Dr. Heyward on a retreat sponsored by our ministry partner, the Solomon Foundation, and was impressed by how adeptly he communicates God's word. I've become a fan of his sermons on YouTube, and I recommend you do too. We wanted to bring a speaker to our campus who would challenge the class of 2023 to faithfully walk with the Lord, and to challenge GLCC alumni, staff, faculty, and supporters to strengthen our resolve to prepare student leaders in the church and world. Dr. Heyward is the first African-American commencement speaker in our college's history. He's the first commencement speaker from the Churches of Christ in our college's history. I'm delighted that he will forever hold those 2 distinctions because I can think of no one more deserving. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Orpheus J. Heyward.
I want to appreciatively thank Dr. Weller for the invitation to be part of this graduating class 2023. Grateful to God that we have reached this momentous occasion. Grateful to the full spectrum of the faculty and all those who participate in the operation of this school. I bid congratulations to the graduates who have matriculated through this process and are now making a transitory move toward moving into their life trajectory. I'm grateful because I recognize the importance of educational process, and not only the importance, but the incredible privilege it is to engage in this kind of journey. When I thought about this commencement, I thought about what would be words that would effectively encourage you as it relates to whatever your life pursuit may be from this posture. And one of the things that I would hope to impart to you today is to learn the idea of doing purpose on purpose. Not just living life and not just moving haphazardly, not just going through educational process, but stumbling into the full spectrum of your purpose. To live life in such a way where you are not moving without direction, but you're actually beginning to move into a context of understanding what it is that God would have you to specifically do. To that end, I want to invite you into the idea of discovering your life calling. And life calling should not be confused with just secular pursuit or a secular career. But when we speak about the idea of life calling, we are actually talking about stumbling into that context where you understand why God placed you here. That's far beyond just an occupation. That's far beyond just moving into a degree. That's far beyond titles. That really has to do with how will you take what you know to make ultimate impact, to make change and transformation in the lives of others, to stumble into a space where you can say, God, I know why I'm here, and I am ready to make change. To that end, I want to suggest to you at least 3 things that will help you discover that. And that is, 1, understanding what is your foundational values. And by foundational values, I'm speaking about the idea of what are your set of convictions? For to live without conviction is but to live without boundaries. To have no convictions is like being a city with no walls. It is one that does not understand how far to go, is one who does not understand the lines over which you do not step. Everyone must have foundational values, convictions by which they live that govern their lives. Because if I'm living my life without conviction, then I am a person that does not fully understand the sovereignty of my God. To walk within my foundational values indicates that there is something that governs me. There is a sovereign ruler that dictates how I am to live my life. I ought to be the very manifestation of the character of God. When I step into a space, I ought not be a thermometer that adjusts the temperature, but you need to be a thermostat that sets temperature. That when I walk into a context, my presence is felt not because I am so important, but the God that I represent is important. I need to have foundational values. And within my foundational values, it begins with faith. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. I need to have conviction that translates into character, because if I have convictions with no character, that simply means I have become an intellectual gymnast that has no application. And so at some point, my faith in God has to translate into manifested character, which then becomes an opportunity for me to serve. Which brings me to my next point. Not only must I have foundational values, I then must discover what is my unique design. What makes me different from everyone else? I have a fingerprint that no one else has. I have gifts that are unique to me. Everyone must go through the process of discovering what is your uniqueness. God made you wonderfully, and you have to become knowledgeable about who you are. I am different, I am unique, and I am unapologetically a person created by God with a set of gifts that I believe no one else has. No one can do what you do like you do it. This is why it is dangerous to be an imitation. Why be an imitation when you are the best version of you? I don't want to spend my time trying to be something I'm not. I want to discover the uniqueness of my design. Well, how do I discover the uniqueness of my design? One, I need to be mindful that I have strengths. Take the time to recognize the strengths that you have, that God has allowed you to become. In other words, understand the strengths that are related to what you do naturally, that is so easy for you to do that it is in the context of my strength. Be honest with your weaknesses, but don't live according to the limitation of weakness. Live toward your strength and manage your weaknesses. Know who you are in terms of your strength. But not only know your strength, you need to respect the fact that God has allowed you to have experiences. Experiences shape us. Experiences help us to understand our uniqueness. As we live life, and God allows me to go through a variety of different contexts, as God allows me to experience all of these different aspects of life, I go through a process of discovering me. So do not despise experience, whether they be good or whether they be bad. Know that I serve a God who says all things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to his purpose. That in every experience that I go through, that is an opportunity for me not to necessarily stumble, but use that moment as a stepping stone to the next level of my life. Even if I fall down, I relish the fact that I do not have to stay down. I can get up and keep moving again. When I was growing up, they used to have this object called Rock'em Sock'em. It was this object that was blown up with a series of air, and my father loved the object and bought it for me. And when he brought me this object, I would punch the object, it would go down, but it kept bouncing back up. And I would hit it again, and it would go down, and then it would bounce back up again. And as many times as I hit it, that's as many times as it kept coming back up. And after a while, I asked my dad, I said, Dad, I'm hitting it with every ounce of strength, every fiber of what I have. Why won't it stay down? He said, son, because the reason it gets up is based on what's on the inside. I want to suggest to you that life may knock you down. You may have moments when you hit the ground, but you can get back up because of what God has put inside of you. Never forget that God has made you unique. And if God lives in you, no circumstance can keep you down. So use your experiences to discover your uniqueness. Know what your strengths are, and then know what your passions are. What do you desire? What drives you and what's pulling on you? Learn to listen to the voice of your passions as it goes through the notion of life pursuit. And it brings me to my third concept, which is personal mission. That every one of you need to become mindful of what it is that is your vision. What vision do you have for your life? But I don't mean just a vision for your personal success. I don't mean a vision that just has to do with the elevation of your accolades. I'm talking about what is your vision to make impact on someone else. That no matter what you do in life, ultimately it ought to relate to the concept of service. That if I'm going to walk in purpose on purpose, then my purpose has to be greater than myself. And so as you begin to think about life and as you begin to think about your pursuit, I would hope you undergird your purpose with the concept of serving. Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, the great sovereign who came and tabernacled among us, came with one express purpose, and that is not to be served, but to serve. He defines his ministry as a ministry of serving people. Everything Jesus did, he did for another man. Born in another man's stable, preached in another man's boat, stood in another man's court, died on another man's cross, buried in another man's tomb, and rose early Sunday morning for another man's justification. And may you recognize the importance of serving within the context of purpose. Whatever your purpose is, as you discover it, it's not just about finding that secular climactic moment, but how are you going to use your foundational values, your unique design, and your personal mission for one purpose, and that's who will you serve? And that ultimately has to be the way you move. And as I begin to land this plane, and as I begin to bring this to closure, I want you to notice Jesus. That in a climactic moment in the last week of his life that we call Passion Week, right before the moment when Jesus would be crucified, he meets with his disciples during this festival called Passover. And as he met with his disciples, they began to argue vehemently about which one of us will be the greatest. And I am amazed every time I read that at the climactic moment when Jesus is about to die, their greatest question is which one of us is going to be greatest. And in the last moment of Jesus' life, in this climactic moment, in this moment when he is going to fulfill the great purpose of God and utter the great words, it is finished. He has to have a moment to teach his disciples what is true greatness. And as they argue about which one is greatest, Jesus does the unthinkable. He takes a towel and girds himself, doing the task of a menial slave in the Palestinian world. God in the flesh, the one who had come to save us from sin, wants to demonstrate greatness by girding himself with a towel and washing his disciples' feet. And as he washes his disciples' feet, be mindful that as he does this menial task of a slave as God in the flesh, as he does this, just know that in a few moments that his closest disciples are going to betray him. Judas is present and he is about to betray him, and yet Judas gets the privilege of having his feet washed. Jesus was so great at service that he did not choose whose feet he would wash. But even someone that was about to hurt him, service was more important than what they were about to do, and Jesus washed the feet of those who would turn on him. Let me tell you, the greatest perspective of service is when you no longer choose whose feet you will wash, but that you wash anybody's feet who's in need. And when you get to that place, that's when you're truly walking in purpose. May I suggest to you that as I close, that God in the final roundup of affairs is not going to be concerned with the title that you achieved. God is not going to be impressed necessarily with the climactic moment of receiving accolades. God is not going to check for your title, but God is going to check for how dirty is your towel. If your towel is not dirty, then your title doesn't matter. And may you know that as you move forward from this place, as you get this wonderful moment of graduating as the class of 2023, as you are being launched into the next part of your life, may you remember your foundational values. May you remember your unique design. May you remember your personal mission. And may you not be caught up in the title. But when God comes back, you'll have a dirty towel. May God bless you, and congratulations on this day.